Chancellor, for services to theatre, to film, and particularly for his campaigning for the world to become a better place, I present Colin Firth for an honorary degree of the University.
Nobody wears orange flares, surely. I don't know how long it took you to complete your degree, but I started studying at King Alfred's, as it was then called, at the age of 7. So by my maths, it puts me on something like a 40-year course. Many of my experiences here have, in one way or another, served to turn cherished assumptions on their heads and force me to unlearn much that I'd taken for granted. What better education can a school provide? I think the beginning was the Saturday morning pottery class in which I made passionately expressive ashtrays for anyone who would take them, really. And this taught me that ardent good intentions and creative drive does not necessarily result in a thing of beauty. On Saturday afternoons we had the use of the swimming pool along with other academic offspring, and that taught me that college professors have far greater gravitas when fully dressed. And then there were my earliest theatrical experiences, the most memorable of which was seeing a medieval mystery play featuring the then Principal Marshal Rose in the role of God, a role with which I continued to associate him and subsequent principals for many years to come. I rather painfully collided with Mr. Rose one Saturday afternoon in the deep end of that crowded swimming pool. It was an encounter which ultimately led me to question his divinity. Much later, as a young adult, I was no less awestruck by a meeting at the John Stripe Theatre with my then idol, the playwright Eugene Ionesco, who assured me that everything that I had understood about him was nonsense, and that I had missed the point of his entire life's work. And yet I was happy. When many days spent in the company of high-powered lecturers, professors, students, and it was the students that I admired most. So as a small child, I saw these complex, enigmatic and impossibly tall creatures whose mysterious high regard for my parents made it increasingly difficult as I grew older to maintain my own obstreperous teenage attitude to them. My parents, that is. So if as a small child I looked on these students as towering examples of sophistication and achievement, I was very curious to see how they would look to me now, today. Well, I see exactly the same thing. I see graduates, real ones, slightly shorter, but no less shining examples of sophistication and achievement, people who have been tested against the odds, proved themselves and been justly rewarded. I, on the other hand, have never been known to hold one of these before. I think the last certificate of merit I received was my cycling proficiency certificate. I rather imagined that, in the words of Eartha Kitt, my tombstone would be my diploma. So I'm not going to stand before the honest victors of the rigours of coursework and attempt to patronise them with wisdom I don't have or platitudes about the importance of eternal edification. You can Google those platitudes on websites with names like thequotegarden.com and the Graduation Speech Database, and some of them very good, actually. I can recommend them. I represent a profession which is dismissed by some as trivial, vain and ridiculous. And they might have a point, but luckily I'm rather easily infused, so one of the advantages of not quite growing up properly is that it keeps the curiosity alive. And so my job, like any job, if you let it, has a way of facilitating that curiosity. My achievements have taught me nothing, and the disappointments have just made me rather cross. But if you have, as I do, a proclivity for getting knocked off your horse, then you'll find yourself continually asking why. And once you do that, the questions just keep coming. And it's these questions that stop the whole thing grinding to a halt. They get me up in the morning and they animate me through the day, challenging the old suppositions, causing me to collide repeatedly with my limitations, which are painful business. I rather like that. And they've also given me a little bit of perversity and put a bit of chutzpah into my otherwise impossibly polite Winchester comportment. And there are rarely any answers, but as you soon learn that the passing pain of getting back on your horse does not compare to the lasting regret of not doing so. So if I have one direct piece of advice to give, it's this. Be careful not to let success hold you back. Take your degree, celebrate it, be incredibly smug about it, put it in a frame and give it to your mother. Perhaps you can take it out at Christmas and Easter and give it a cuddle and then put it back. You might as well know I have no intention of following my own advice. Mine's going to be the first thing you see as you enter the front door of my house. When no one else touches it when I have breath in my body. I envy you your achievements today. And I understand why there are so many quotes to be found about the eternal student. The world of the student is a good one, don't give it up. And so perhaps, as long as it doesn't come too early and you work for it until the very end, the tombstone might not be such a bad diploma. So I leave you with my very great respect and admiration, and to the university I add my long-held and heartfelt gratitude. Thank you.